the second part is, what's the effectiveness of PWA and its pros and cons? Is Magento 2.3.4, does Magento 2.3.4 come with PWA?
Okay, I can answer that, or give it. We can go. Let's do a round robin on this because we're all super interested in PWA, right? So the pros and cons of PWA. The pros are that it's going to be faster. It loads all at once. It's a sort of a virtual. It's a app-like experience that runs on the web. The cons are going to be that it runs in a headless environment, which means it's not strictly integrated directly to Magento. It's integrated using APIs, and will require a different skill set than your typical front-end Magento developer. The PWA Studio does come with any version of Magento 2.3 and above. The 2.3.4 is certainly supported for PWA Studio. Vinai, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, sure. So from my perspective, PWA is interesting because it allows the front-end team to work independently of back-end development, pretty much, which is nice. So it can be progressive web apps make it interesting for some teams who are set up in that way. It certainly is an interesting factor because a lot of that tech stack, especially in regards to PWA Studio, is kind of modern and new and shiny. So it appeals to some developers. That said, I personally don't think it's really that important to be successful to be on a PWA stack. It certainly adds some complexity in some areas, while of course there might be less complexities in others, like I said, with the separation of development teams. But in some regards, for example, search engine optimization, it certainly adds a couple of obstacles to work around. So it really depends, right? Personally, I think both approaches, both server-side rendering and PWAs, and we could now, of course, get really technical and talk about how even server-rendered pages can be PWAs and such. It's not necessary to do that by any means if you've got a successful store. But if you're trying to ramp up, build something new, you might consider it.
So I'm just going to backtrack a little bit because I can see for some people PWA the expression probably doesn't actually even mean that much. So I think if you're looking at it from a merchant's point of view, what is PWA? So PWA stands for Progressive Web App. And basically it's the idea is that instead of developing a separate app for mobile devices, you develop a browser compatible app that acts like a mobile app. And what that allows is certain things to happen when you don't have an internet connection. I mean, there's a whole load of things you can do with it, and as little or as much, but you can actually have things preloaded. So if you lose an internet connection, then you can still carry on using the app. So a lot of newspaper websites use it, so it preloads some of the content. So if you go on a train, you go through a tunnel, that app is still there. But also, that's extrapolating that you can do things like go through large amounts of the checkout process and the without an internet connection, and that will be processed afterwards. A whole load of other reasons why you use it. So progressive web apps, for those of you who are not going to really delve down into the technical of how you create a progressive web app, it basically is the ability of creating an app without having to someone specifically create an app for your store to be mobile, to be on a mobile. It's not the same as responsive. That's kind of a slightly different area. And of course, you know, the other consideration is that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily for your store create a mobile app, but actually if you create a progressive web app, then you've got that functionality, and you can access functionality on your phone, that kind of thing. So the advantage is exactly that, which is, you know, you can have an app that and have everything all developed under the one code base, I guess, without having to maintain two separate code bases for an app and for your website. Some of the disadvantages that you know come up, SEO I know does come up quite a few times as a bit of an issue. If search engine optimization is an important part of your marketing mix, then that's something that you really need to consider when going down the progressive web apps route. There are solutions to that, but it's something that you do need to consider. It feels like, I remember when we went down the route of responsive, you know, what, 6 or 7 years ago, when that kind of like started coming out, and it's like everyone suddenly needs to have a responsive site, and I feel like that's where we're at with progressive web apps now. We're at the moment we're in a world where we have, you know, two websites, or you have an app and you have a website, and eventually, you know, we now get that crossover where those things are going to turn into one. So, you know, as time goes on, some might be using it now. In 2 years' time, most will probably be using progressive web apps, I would guess, looking at that. So it kind of feels like it's an inevitability rather than an option. I don't know how anyone else feels about that, but that's how I feel. That's how I feel it's going anyway.
Yeah, so just to give a larger perspective on PWA or progressive web apps, we did have a question from Steve about, well, number one, what does PWA mean? It's a progressive web app. It's a technology from Google that helps to run your website in a different format. So basically your browser can cache a lot of that data, so it's faster than a regular web page. It does run all as one larger application. So it's not like your standard Magento theme. It has to be, it's built differently and runs on a different tech stack. And I am sharing the screen from what is a progressive web app. So I hope that fills in some information for people. It is fast, it's secure, it is responsive, just like Deryck was saying. It is cross-browser compatible. Some of the key features are it does work in an offline mode. So if you're on a mobile device and you do go offline, it'll continue to work as long as you visited it once. So it does cache some of your information on your local device, and then you're able to use it. Of course, you can't check out completely because you'll need that checkout process to talk to some payment gateway. On your device, it will install like a mobile app, so you can get a little icon on your device, and it will allow for push notifications as well. So you can subscribe, or you can allow for notifications from a website to be pushed to your device, similar to an app. And it does have shareable content. So I think from a high level, Steve, I hope those answered all those questions. And
if I could chime in, so the only thing that that's really new is this offline mode and push notifications. All the other aspects could be achieved without PWA actually, including offline mode if it's just about browsing, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
that's the one thing that makes it new.